What is up, guys? Eric here from EBM Productions. Again, back with another video. Yeah, if it's a bit dark on my face, the light is charging, like I said in the previous video. Okay, let's talk about Ilia Topuria versus Islam makhachev. Very interesting fight because too many people are split in the middle actually with this one. However, obviously, recency bias must be accounted for here. So we can't really go on what we saw versus max. Let me say it like that. And we can't say, oh, that means, well, okay, essentially MMA math. Ilia beat Volk, Ilia beat Max. That means he instantly beats Islam. Especially with that first fight being arguably a fight where you could argue Volk should have won. Which I'm one of those people. I'll tell you straight. I'll argue that Volk aged it. He aged it. But that's why I wasn't pissed, because I was like, oh well, I could see how the judges were scoring it for Islam makhachev as well. Okay, just want to take a sip, guys. So, why I feel, again, let me do this. Something I don't do that too often anymore is I honestly argue in favor of both sides, and then we collectively decide, or I give you guys the opportunity to decide. And in this case, I'm going to argue first for Ilia Topuria because the memory is fresh, and also been watching a lot of content, seeing a lot of comments about the same topic. So obviously my memory is a bit more fresh on that side. So, okay, I'm going to start off this way. Distance management first. A thing that people don't take into account is that even people think distance management is more associated with striking when it's actually associated with everything in fight, like combat arts. Hell, it's even associated with gun defense, etc., like self-defense as well. Imagine somebody has a gun, but he is 2 feet from you, for example, 2 feet. You have a better chance of disarming him compared to if he is 50 feet away and already pointing the gun at you. It's distance management. If you can see it coming, you could position yourself in a more advantageous position. But the only thing is, again, same thing with fighting. You need to be able to read that person. And in fighting, there's a mask, there's a masquerade going on, there's a smoke screen, or like Demetrius Johnson says, there's a void. So yeah, okay, first thing first, distance management. Ilia has a crazy way of using boxing. Okay, I won't say he's a full-blown boxer with his footwork. The guys who watch Boxing Gems, etc., all of these boxing channels like me, will understand. He still doesn't move exactly like a boxer, and he doesn't move footwork-wise as good as some of the absolute elite boxers, like Terence Crawford, for example. But that doesn't mean he's bad. You guys need to understand that. It just means it's not a boxing, purebred boxing style. Sorry, there's a small bug here. Get away, little guy. You're going to die. By accident, you're going to go in my throat. Anyway. So, how Ilia moves, he crosses distance quite well. His drop step that he does to close distance is so smart. Canelo does a variant of this, just with his rear leg, whichever side you are. I'm more so associated with southpaw, but I can switch. But whatever leg you're on, Canelo likes to lean a little bit back because he fires off of the rear leg. He's not full-blown front leg heavy. Kind of like in MMA how Nate Diaz is front foot heavy. But Ilia is front foot heavy in certain moments, and then he launches himself. He kind of skips towards his ops. And then also, he cuts them off using it. Canelo does this brilliantly as well. However, a few fighters that have figured him out doing that has stopped him. Now, Ilia has not been stopped because of the octagon shape. It's another thing. And also, he uses a few other tricks there to close the distance, to manage his distance. He does overshoot sometimes, but that's only when he throws very hard or where he just doesn't care. He never finds himself out of position because he's making mistakes, essentially. So, his distance management is quite good. My only problem versus Islam would be the size difference, something that we need to take into account. His reach is, I think, actually the same or just slightly below Islam's. Islam's was 73.5 inches or something like that. I'm going to go for 74 inches just for argument's sake here. And his is 69 inches. 69 point something. I think it's more around there. Doesn't seem like he had less reach than Volk to the full degree. Volk just, he does a bow and arrow jab when he jabs. That's why he extends all the way. That's why the jab in that first round versus Volk was really potent. We don't really advise for people to bow and arrow jab when doing boxing for obvious reasons. You could see already how open I was. And that was one of the reasons why Ilia capitalized on it versus Volk. Anyway, the size difference, okay, the height difference generally makes the reach difference a big problem. And then also that means your feet, your legs have to work harder to get you into range, because that difference is what you need to close in a smart way without your opponent seeing it. Ilia can do that. He can do that, and he would do that, but I'm not sure with Islam's bouncing motion and the way he moves, because he actually has quite decent footwork for MMA. I'm not sure that would translate perfectly, meaning Ilia will get tagged with shots that we all would have been like, whoa, we didn't even think that was going to land, because of the distance management. However, we do not know if Islam hits hard enough to deter Ilia. Same thing happened with Max now. It's same thing happened with Josh Emmett. Same thing happened with everybody who's fought Ilia Topuria. They would need a crazy amount of stinging power in their hands or stopping power to keep him off of him. And that is something that we've seen Islam don't deal as well with. He doesn't like being pushed back too much, and it drains his gas tank. I mean, in the first Volk fight, it really showed. Hell, it showed in the Dustin Poirier fight now. Yeah, thinking about it, he slowed down. He didn't slow down in the traditional sense. There's different levels of it, but he did slow down. So these are already factors that distance management already gives an advantage for Ilia. The only thing I have a problem with is, and this is where we go the other side, the distance management that Islam uses is moving in and out and then setting certain things up. He's quite tricky on the feet, actually. That's why Volk wasn't just bulldozing him on the feet or just slowly just taking over like he did versus Max in their 3 fights. The same way he did with Ortega, same way he did with Korean Zombie, Yair Rodriguez. You understand. And even Ilia Topuria in the first round. That's why he didn't do that versus Islam. It's because Islam is tricky with how he strikes. Something that we always wanted Khabib to be able to do, which he never really did. He was just like, nah, I just swing. I have a chin that's really strong, and I hit hard. Let's go. And I really like that about Khabib, by the way, that sheer rawness. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. So what I mean by the weird distance is Ilia will seem more hesitant to throw than he usually is just because of that, and also because of what happened to him versus Jai Herbert. When Jai Herbert clipped him, he instantly panic wrestled instead of striking. I remember he had a striking exchange before the wrestling takedown there, and that same thing might happen, and we know how bad that can end up. So if that happens, we will need to see, has he improved enough past the Jai Herbert fight to be composed and get away from strikes from there just to keep himself safe? Or will he keep the distance and stay away? So distance management, I lean actually in favor of Ilia, although the size difference and the way Islam moves and sets up his strikes using distance might depict that. This is one of those fights where you need to see the first round to depict the rest. Yes, that's what happened with the Volk fight. Everybody thought that Islam was just going to win. I picked Islam to beat Volk that first time, and I was like, what is going on, when the first round nearly ended and Volk looked very good. Now, at the end of the round, he got taken down, and I was like, oh, this might be the slow descent from here, but it wasn't. It completely wasn't. The second round was a lot better for Volk, in my opinion. It's the one that's so controversial, though, but still. So I'm going to say, first, distance management, which is essential. I lean in favor of Ilia. It's very close, though. So in the actual fight, if it ever happens, it would be cool to see if I was correct here with my judgment there. Next up is let's talk about the grappling first. The big hippo, the big elephant, the big mammoth in the room. The wrestling, Islam is just a different level in wrestling. I understand that Volk shot in on Ilia at one point, but the thing is the way he shot in was not perfectly set up. He knew. That's why he didn't try and push through it to get him down to the ground from there. They just locked in a clinched kind of situation, and I remember Ilia just striking at the body, and also they just stopped. Kind of one stopped the other. Funny enough, what I talked about in my Hamzat Chimaev video is what Ilia did correctly when Volk shot in on him. I just want to take a sip here. For some odd reason, it's very hot this side, meaning my throat is constantly dry. Anyway, guys, so what happened, what Whittaker didn't do right versus Hamzat is he didn't slow it down. Ilia did this perfectly. I can't believe I didn't think about this example, actually. But, oh well, we're not talking about Volk versus Ilia here, that's why. But in that exchange, Volk shot in below, and he ended up in this position where Ilia is just underhooking him, and they were just moving a bit back. Then they separated and started striking again. Ilia does that quite well. That, and then he scrambles at the right times. So that is a factor. But I don't think he has the strength, that mountain strength that Islam has. And Islam has a few very slick tricks to set up his takedowns from there. Same with his striking. I think that's where it came from. It first came from his wrestling, and then it transferred over to his striking. And that's why he's so good right now. That means I'm fully leaning in favor of Islam. I mean, I think the defense would be a lot better than most people have been versus Islam Makhachev. Let's say it like this. He'll be better than Dustin Poirier. Not as good as Volk, but better than Dustin Poirier. That means he will still get taken down, but he'll be able to fight back, get out of certain positions, etc. It's just the strength and the trickiness of how Islam sets up his takedowns would result in him still getting taken down. And then we would need to see something that we've never seen from Ilia. And that is most likely his grit. Does he have the mental fortitude from there just to constantly keep fighting, even if he's taken down, tired, and he's just like, what the hell should I do here? Although people have been training this for the last 8 years to get over that, because too many people broke mentally versus Khabib, Colby, Usman, hell, even TJ Dillashaw when he used his wrestling back then. People folded against that kind of style. And when Volk fought Islam Makhachev, it was the first fighter that I saw that mentally was prepared ahead of time. It was something I was preaching about to the MMA communities in 2018, 2019. I kept telling people, if you fight a person like this, you need to say in your head that you will be constantly taken down. Like, the mental side of it needs to be like, it will be almost like you're never going to be on your feet. That's what you mentally have to get ready for. And it was always like, the guys say they're ready for it, and then they weren't. And then you can see it in their face, their demeanor, etc. And that's why so many of these guys got choked out. Charles Oliveira, for example, got them down like that many times. And that's why people started disregarding Oliveira's insane grappling, and slowly got knocked out and knocked down from there. Anyway, we're not talking about them. I think So we're 1-1 so far. So let's say, what's the decider? It can't be the grit thing because that's a question mark. Most people will say, oh no, the knockout power. Like, the problem is, if you can't land a certain shot due to them being in open stances towards each other, meaning orthodox versus southpaw, it changes the game. Like, that's where you need to watch Ilia versus Bryce Mitchell to see how did he do striking wise versus Bryce, because Islam is even better than Bryce at striking. And yeah, there's a famous clip where Ilia is missing, literally falling over and missing. If he falls over with an overextended hook against the cage versus Islam, Islam is shooting on him and he has his back instantly. And again, from there's still many questions about his grappling as well. So I think you guys can already tell I'm leaning towards Islam. The more I'm thinking about it. Now, I love Ilia, actually. I hope this is one of those fights where I tell people, prove me wrong, please. Same thing happened with Volk the first time he fought Islam. If this fight ever happens, like let's say Diego Lopez and Ilia happens, and again, Ilia just starches the man, which stylistically, that fight, it's a horrible fight for Lopez. I'm telling you guys, it's a horrible fight. There's too many people in the comments of these posts just thinking, he has a chin and he hits hard, that it will instantly mean he wins. There's so many fundamental mistakes compared to what Ilia does right that Lopez does wrong. So many. And he has holes. So many holes. That's why I was like, he's an entertaining fighter, but he's kind of like Arnold Allen, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, definitely. All of these guys, they have something to prove. They fight somebody that's really at that level, and then they get shown, and they're, well, shown what's what. And then people are like, oh no, they're fraud checked. Meanwhile, they weren't frauds. It's just, this was something they didn't need to fix up until that point. And how they lose would decide how the rest of the career goes. Yair Rodriguez bounced back quite well. Ortega did mentally, but technically, I don't think he improved much. Yada yada, you guys get that point. So I'm leaning towards Islam here. I think his distance management would make things tricky, meaning Ilia won't just strike like a crazy person, and he will still miss a certain few shots because of the open stance matchup. The wrestling, though. The wrestling will be very interesting because Islam will still be able to get him down at one point, but I think he will struggle to keep him down. That's something I'm really curious about. By the way, Ilia is not submitting Islam. Sorry. If Oliveira couldn't do it, you're not doing it. I'll put cash on that. And then from there, we would know who wins based on the grit, because we've seen Islam have to endure somebody on top of him, wailing on his face in round 5, and he knew just hold on. He was on the point of breaking, but he still kept fighting. We haven't seen Ilia there yet. The Josh Emmett fight was the closest, and that fight pointed out something that's like another key factor, is cardio. If you rewatch that fight, I want you guys to go rewatch it to see what I saw. Round 3, 4, and 5. Ilia was still very active, etc., but he wasn't as active. And he was doing active recovery while he was doing the round. Meaning he wanted to stay ahead or just fall slightly behind while being less active to gain his energy back, which is a very smart thing to do. However, there's certain fighters you can't do that against. That was kind of one of the key things that I thought would play a role in the Volk fight if Volk's chin held out. And I'd said, I don't think it's gonna, because stylistically they didn't match up the same as this fight. So this fight is very interesting, guys, because we have a guy that is very well rounded in Ilia. He strikes like crazy, like very good. His distance management is what I really like. He has a very interesting distance management where he cuts off the cage, almost triple G style, and that skip step. I'm going to call it a skip step for now. There's a different name in boxing, but I'm going to say it's a skip step. He skips into distance very fast and unassumingly. That is a key part of this because it plays into how far you are away, means it gives you time to defend wrestling and to get in position to defend, which happened when he fought Volk and Bryce. And then also his angles, his head movement does play a role. It will set up head kicks, but in an open stance fight, it's harder to set up the same kick that he got caught with versus Jai Herbert, because we don't know. Yeah, I don't think Islam's switch kick, his lead switch kick, that means front leg, I don't think his switch kick or his lead high kick is that good. It's not that fast, and unless he times him between punches, which is also a gamble because you're going to kick forearm maybe, or you're going to kick into a punch, which just log jams it. We don't know if he's going to land that kick. I still think that is still Ilia's biggest opening, is the head kick. But nobody has capitalized on it correctly or set it up correctly, which shows you how good Ilia is. But in the end here, I do think the last part, the grit, is the key that we have to think about. So I'm leaning towards Islam still. Good fight, I'd say, after Lopez fight and after Islam defends versus Arman, which I think he beats Arman. Just barely, but he still beats him. Then we need to see this fight. Cheers, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? And what is something that you guys think I didn't think about? Cheers.